Hello and welcome to part 4 of the AppSense Masterclass series. This video is dealing with deploying AppSense and basic configuration management within the AppSense Management Suite. In previous versions we've dealt with how to build a demo system, requirements, prerequisites, how to get the AppSense software and how to install it and configure the servers. So this part of the demos is to help you actually configure AppSense with basic deployments and configurations. So let's move straight into our demonstrations. So as we can see here is my terminal server domain controller, the AppSense Management Center machine. So this is the machine that has all of my AppSense management servers on it. So the first thing we need to do is we need to go into our management console. So if we just double click the icon that we've already prepared, and we're waiting for the AppSense Management Center to connect up, and here it is. So as in previous demos, we need to click on connect, and I am already logged on as my domain admin. So here's my management server that we previously set up. Hit the connect button, accept my pass-through authentication using Windows domain services, and hopefully we should get a connection coming through, and if we get all colors on the screen, that means that we are successful in connecting. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a deployment group for our machines that we want to configure using AppSense. So this is the management center. This is the middle tier of the architecture. AppSense is split into 3 tiers: client, where you want to install the software or you want it to be actioned; the middle tier, which is the AppSense servers, in this case the AppSense management server; and then the SQL database, which we've already formed the connection through here. So we need to create ourselves a deployment group. Now by default we have a default deployment group where any servers will automatically drop into that have not been configured. We do not want that to happen. I want to start off by managing my XP desktops. To do this, we're going to deployment groups and create a new deployment group. And here we have a new group, and we shall give it a name, and we'll name this to my XP desktops. Okay, so now we have a deployment group called XP desktops, and currently there's no actions against it, no configurations against it. To do that we need to create membership rules. So if we select membership rules, we see that my XP desktop group has appeared. If I select it, click and go edit group conditions, now I can determine which machines that are activated on the network communicating back to the management server will belong into my XP deployment group. And I can quite easily go in and select by computers by BIOS name or through the Active Directory. And I'm going to do this based on container. So I'm going to browse my Active Directory, and I'm going to find in my app demo, my desktops, my XP desktop container group. Select OK and OK. And there we have an include my XP desktops OU. Okay, so any machine that contacts back to the AppSense management server that belongs in this OU will automatically be processed by the XP desktops group. Accept changes? Yes, I do want to accept those changes. So that's how we create a deployment group and attach it to the Active Directory. So what we need to do now is we need to configure this group. So we just work from top down. We go to settings. This is a poll period. How often will the XP desktops communicate back to this server, the AppSense Management Center, to see whether they've got any changes, which is based on the computer poll period. Now in a demo environment we want this set to 1 minute, so as soon as we make any changes all we have to do is wait 1 minute. In a live environment you would probably be setting these to 2 hours because you do not want all of your machines communicating back consistently. Demo environment is fine for 1 minute. And upload is how often will the XP desktops communicate back to the server with results. And again we're going to set that to 1 minute. And we're going to tick the bottom button to allow the desktop to self-register within this group. So when it communicates it says, hello, I'm here, I have an AppSense client information, please register me into this group. And therefore it will click this to allow this. Okay. Packages. The next important part we need to come down to is packages. Now this screen may look a little bit confusing to start off with, however it's fairly simple once we get used to it. At the top half of the screen is what is going to go onto your client machines, my XP desktops. The bottom half of the screen is what is available inside the SQL database in terms of AppSense to be put onto that machine. So I'm going to want to deploy out all of my agents, all three components of AppSense. There is a fourth component called the AppSense Client Communication Agent, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But first off, let's push out what we want to go onto our desktops. Now, I'm running a Windows XP 32-bit, so I'm going to select and assign the Application Manager agent, the service for Application Manager, and assign it. I can also, if I wish, select the 32-bit. It will be clever enough to work out which one it needs to install. And I'm going to do that for Environment Manager, and I'm going to do it also for the Performance Manager. So we'll just select and assign these here. Performance Manager and assign. Yes. So what we've now done is we've moved from bottom to top, and you can drag and drop as well if you want. So these are the components of AppSense: Application Manager, Environment Manager, Performance Manager, and the Client Communication Agent, which is a client-side technology that I want to put onto my XP desktops once it's registered itself via the membership rules. So we hit submit on that, and then we go to installation schedule. On the installation schedule is when do we want these services to be installed. Bearing in mind that services will require the endpoint device, the XP desktop, to be rebooted. So whenever you install an AppSense service or upgrade, which is a deinstall followed by an install, it will reboot, so you can schedule this. Now in our demo environment, we don't really care, we want this to be immediately, so I'm going to select immediately. We can also do this configurations, which we'll see later on. And again, we're going to hit submit on that. So quite simply, just to start up, just to go through that again, we have a membership rule. Any machine that communicates back to this management center that is in the XP desktops groups will be managed by the XP desktop group here under deployment groups. Our poll periods are set to 1 minute, so we're only going to have to wait for 1 minute for changes to be activated. And the packages we're going to deploy out here are these packages, which are the AppSense components, and we're going to install them immediately. However, if I go and look at computers, you can see here that it has discovered through Active Directory that XP Desktop 01 is here, and we can see this through our Active Directory. So if we go into Active Directory and fire this up, you can see in Active Directory it has actually gone through and evaluated that actually in our XP desktops we do have an XP Desktop 01. However, as it says, there is no client communication agent installed, so all we've done is self-discovered in Active Directory there is a machine in this group, but if we select it and packages, there is nothing in here at the moment. So what we need to do is we need to go to our XP machine and install the AppSense Client Communication Agent, or the client side of the client server technology. So to do that, let's move straight across into our XP machine, and here is our XP machine. And we need to log on as an administrator to do this. So we're going to switch user from our finance user to administrator and put in our password. Oops. And this is our domain password for domain administrator, and log on. Now there's many ways of getting the client communication agent on, but the simplest way for demonstrations and POC would be to go to Internet Explorer, and we're going to go into the website that we tested previously, HTTP, and we're going to go to the management server itself, the AppSense management server, which in this case is my domain controller, which is appdemo-dc/management server. Management server. And this is going to communicate to the default web page for AppSense, and it's going to give us a web page of all of my possible installs that I need. And what we're going to need to do is select the 32-bit client communication agent off the AppSense web page. And here we see we have the web page, and here are the list of all of the components that I could possibly install, from the consoles to documentation. The part we are interested in, because this is 32-bit Windows XP, is the 32-bit client communication agent, and there are a couple of prerequisites. Now this is all MSI files, so you can use SCCM or Ulterius or group policies to push this out. It's up to you, or you can do it manually as I'm doing it. So I'm going to hit the prerequisites. Windows Installer 3.1, that's going to be installed. We know that because of XP is all service packed up, but the XML core services may not be there. So we're just going to select this and run this. Here we can see it's running, so we're just going to select this to run this. And we'll just go through the wizard. So next, standard Microsoft installation, next, install, and let that install. As we can see, that's installing away quite happily. Registering product, and we're done. So now we have the prerequisites installed. All we need to do now is install the 32-bit client communication agent. So we click OK on this and rerun it. As you can see, signed from AppSense, so we click the run button. And we have the wizard dialog. So it's just a matter of following the wizard quite simply. Click next, accept, read the document, read the license agreement, of course we all do, default installation directory, and this screen is extremely important. Just follow the example up the top, and this is pointing directly back to your AppSense management server. So in this case it's appdemo-dc. You do not need to put /management server on there. What will happen as soon as you've installed the client communication agent, it will communicate back via the IIS web page to the web server on our management console and self-register itself, and then start the installation process. So again, we'll just click next and install. As we can see, the installation is now happening. It's installing the AppSense client communication agent, 32 bits. It's going to form the communications and self-register itself back to the AppSense server that we've just been setting the deployment group up for XP desktops. So it's just registering, installing, starting the services up, and registering the product and remove backup files. Done, and we're completed. And we can close down on there. Okay, so if we go back to our AppSense management server and we look into our computers, we're just waiting for the refresh. That will be based upon the poll period that we set before, so we may have to wait up to a minute. So if we go back to computers underneath XP desktops, we can see actually we've got a communication here. We've now lost the NoCCA install and we're just waiting for the updates. So what's going to happen is that some MSI execs are going to be kicked off, the services are going to be transmitted to the client machine, and they're going to be remotely installed. They're going to be based on the packages that we've selected here. So we already have the 32-bit client communication agent installed, so it's going to be installing the 32-bit application manager, environment manager, and performance manager agents. And of course, it's going to reboot that machine. So if we click back into computers now, we'll just have a look. We're just waiting for these poll periods. So you see we're at 36 seconds here, and lo and behold, there we can see. So it's automatically recognized down here that we have the Management Center Client Communication Agent and its version installed already. We are pending installs for Environment Manager, Performance, and Application Manager. If we go back to our XP machine and actually do a Task Manager, you should be able to see the MSI execs running on the machine, and there we have one that's running there. So this may take up to about 10 minutes to install all of these, so I'm going to pause the video, wait for that to install, and we should see that our desktop machine, our XP desktop machine, will install those services and then start the reboot process. So I'm just going to pause the video and wait for that to happen. As you can see, MSI execs are still running, but while this is happening, we're going to configure the rest of the management console. So in the management console, when we logged on, we were required to add username and password to authenticate against the Active Directory to gain access to this console. And a very common mistake is not to change those settings. So to do this, we're going to go down to the security section here. In the security section, we have groups and users, and we see that App Demo Administrator is a server administrator, therefore can log on with his AD credentials and gain access to this console. If, however, I left this and gave it to somebody else and somebody else logged on with their username and password from AD, they would not necessarily get access to this console. So a very simple way that we can do this is going to groups, we can add a group, and we can go domain admins, check names, OK, domain admins, we are going to make server administrators as well. So anyone with Active Directory domain credentials can log on to this machine, connect up to this management console and configure AppSense. Very important to do that, especially if you go on site to do a proof of concept, go off site and the users log on with different names, they'll have no access. If you wish, you can do this by users. For example, I could put into here user 1, check names. I don't have a user 1, so we'll do our finance user, and again my finance user, I could, if I wanted to, make him an administrator or a viewer only. I'm going to cancel that because that does make no sense to me. Move that to go there. And let's have a look back on our XP machine, and we're still installing. You can see we do actually have three MSI exits running, which correspond to the free services that we're trying to install. So, and if we come back and have a look into our deployment groups, in our deployment groups for XP machines, we are still installing, and you can see last response time and a percentage indicator. So we're just going to pause again and wait for that to happen. Okay, if we look, we can see that our XP desktop is actually now rebooting. So we're going to have to wait for this reboot process to happen, and then we should start to see this applying down into the computer packages section underneath my XP desktops here. So our machine is just rebooting itself. So you can see it's shutting down, finalizing the installs. Our XP desktop is now just reinitializing and starting back up. Starting back up now. Services are starting. And we're going to log on to this as the administrator to make sure that the server, the desktop machine, fires up correctly. So let's do that. And we're logged. And as we can see, we've logged on with our administrator and we're back in to our XP desktop. Now if we go and have a look in control panel, inside control panel, and we'll just switch this to an easier view, and we go and have a look at add remove programs, we should now see listed the AppSense agents that have been installed. So here we are: AppSense Application Manager, Client Communication Environment, and Performance Manager Agent. And what we should also see is we go and do a manage onto here, onto this machine, and look underneath the services section. We should also see the AppSense services here. And the user virtualization service is the AppSense Environment Manager user virtualization. So that is our software installed onto our XP desktop. If we go back to our management console now, and as you can see, it's automatically updated within the poll period, 100% completed. The services have been installed. As we can see here, we can see some computer details, and our packages are installed here. So we have managed to put the AppSense services of the three major core components of AppSense Application Environment Performance Manager onto our XP desktop through the membership rules. XP desktops equals this user equals this OU group, through our settings on a poll period, and installing these packages onto the machine. So we've remotely installed these and we've done it immediately, hence the end result we have here. So what we need to do now is create some configurations to sit alongside these. So to do this, we're just going to open the consoles and create default configurations for each of the applications, and at the same time talk through how the configurations are changed, saved, locked and unlocked and deployed. So to do this, we're just going to start off very simply with the AppSense Environment Manager configuration. So we're going to go and create ourselves a very simple blank Environment Manager configuration. To do that, we'll go to the Environment Manager console and execute that. So our console has fired up, and whenever you go in, you will get a default blank configuration. Now later videos, masterclasses, we're going to talk about how to create configurations. For the meantime, we're just going to create a very simple blank config. So my config, I'm going to hit the big green button up the top, and I'm going to save as a configuration in the Management Center. I'm going to save this via the Management Center into the SQL database so it can be used later on. So we're just going to hit configuration in Management Center, and we're going to connect to the Management Center as we've done before. And we get the familiar box. Which Management Center do we want? Of course, we could have one or more. Using my credentials, AppSense Administrator, and connect up. And we are now going to be prompted for a configuration name. Of course, we have nothing. We've never done this before. The list is blank. So we're going to create a configuration name, and we're going to call this EM Demo. And we're going to save and unlock it into the database. And click Save. And that's been done. So if we now go back to our Management Center, we need to deploy this to our XP desktop. So far all we have is the service for Environment Manager, but we now want this configuration. So if we go to our Packages section, we can see now we have an Environment Manager demo config on version 8.1. Every time we make a save to the config, this version number will increase, and we need to assign this. And we have assigned it, and it's assigned version 1.0. Now, because we're in a demo system, a POC, and we're going to be building configurations, then what we're going to do is we're going to say always use the latest version. So every time I change that Environment Manager config, take it from 8.1 to 8.2, 8.3, etc., within 1 minute it will automatically update the endpoint devices, i.e. my XP desktops here. Configuration updates do not require reboots, it's only the installation of the services that do. So we're going to click use latest version, and we should see that it says on the screen using latest version, and we're going to hit submit. Now if I go to my computers now and look back at my XP desktop, we will see that we are pending an install of Environment Manager demo, and it is going to be a configuration. We can tell that by the little icon here, and it says MSI configuration as opposed to MSI agent. And we're waiting now for the poll period to kick in. The client, the XP desktop, will grab this config and apply it next to the service, and there we go, it's done already, and we can see that we have an agent. We go back to our XP desktop, and again I'm logged in as administrator still, and if we go and have a look and add remove programs now, what we should see is that there is now an agent, there it is, for the Environment Manager, and a config deployed against it. So that's creating an initial config. What we're going to do now is we're going to show how to update a config. So back to our Environment Manager console, and as you can see I've got a blank config. There is no name untitled at the top. Every time you save and unlock a config, it will unload it. So we're going to go and load this config up. So we're going to now open a config from the Management Center, or config from the SQL database. And again we've already logged on, so it's remembered, and here is our configuration we've just created. It's a blank config EM demo 8.1.0.0. So we're going to open and lock it. So AppSense configurations in a database work on a check-in, check-out, lock, unlock process. So only one person can edit a config at once. So we're going to open and lock it, and it will load in our config, which at the moment is blank. So we're going to go and make a change. And I always like to do a validation check to make sure that a config is actually running. So I'm going to go and add a node, and this node I'm going to give it a name of sanity check. And in a sanity check, for all users that log on, I'm going to very simply create a shortcut, and I'm going to drop on the desktop a link to notepad.lnk, and we're going to do that from c/windows/system32/notepad.exe. Take a copy of that, drop that down into the icon file name so we have an icon, and click OK. So whenever somebody logs on, Environment Manager will process this and create a shortcut to Notepad on their desktop. Therefore, if I log on to my XP desktop and I see the Notepad for the shortcut to Notepad, I know Environment Manager is running against this configuration and everything's working nicely. And because we have opened and locked, we now must remember to save and unlock. Not save as, we only need to do that initially for a new config, but save and unlock, remove the lock. We give it now some information, so the sanity check edit number 1, and we save that out. If we now go back to our management console, because of our poll period is set to 1 minute in our computers, we should see now pending upgrade to 8.1.1. So what we're doing is we're taking it from 8.1.0 to 8.1.1. So it's the third number that is changing each time I change my configuration, and this is version control and AppSense. So just to sum up with that, what we're doing there is we're opening a config, locking it, making changes, saving and unlocking it, and then based on the poll period you have for your group, that new config will be pushed out. to your machine. And again, we're just waiting on the poll period for that to be pushed out. This is why in a POC demo environment we are setting poll periods to 1 minute, so we're not waiting 2 hours to see any of our changes being replicated out test. In a live environment, you'd be testing this in a sanitized dev system, checking it works before you then push out. And while we're speaking there, we can see that 8.1.1 has actually been upgraded and sent out. So our XP machine, and again we can just go and have a look in add remove programs, and we should see in add remove programs that we are indeed on 8.1.1. So to test this, we need to log off and log on. So let's log off, and we'll log on as our finance user to see whether or not Environment Manager is running. And we know our Environment Manager is running as well because we get this nice little message. It's processing log off scripts, which we don't have any at this stage. And we'll log on as the finance user. And no password. So we're logging on, and AppSense will kick in, and there we have a notepad icon. Therefore I know Environment Manager is running, and it has processed on logon create shortcut on the desktop to notepad.exe. So if now I want to go and create another configuration change, again we go into Environment Manager, we open up our configuration. You notice it's unloaded it again, no title at the top. We open up the configuration, we select, and we can now see the different version numbers. If we select the top one, it will always take the latest version. Open and lock, we'll create so, and if we have a look down, we see our sanity check. And what we'll do is we'll go and create another one in here. So actions, shortcut, create shortcut, and this time we will drop it onto the desktop again, and we'll call this calculator.lnk for link file, and this is coming from, and it's just going to be called calc.exe. We'll take a copy of that, we drop it in here, there's a calculator icon, therefore we know we've got the right one. And we will go file, save, and unlock. Give it another description. Added calc. Click OK. Again, back to our management console. We check, and we can see now we're pending upgrade to 0.2, the third digit you're looking for, and we're waiting for an upgrade. Now, because this is on a log-on process, then we obviously have to log off and log back on for this to happen. And a very common mistake for people to do is to save the config out and they think it's immediately been sent out without waiting for this upgrade. So you should always come and check back in your deployment group to make sure that all of the agents and all the configs have green ticks across the board. That way you know that your agent has been set up, installed with a configuration file against it. And again, we're just waiting for that. So while we're waiting for that, we'll log off our guy, log him off, ready for when it comes in. So we're back to our management console here, and again we're just waiting for this poll period to kick through to say that we've upgraded it to 0.2, and we're there, we're good to go. So let's go back to our XP desktop, and again we'll just log back on again, and this time hopefully we should get two icons, one for calculator and one for notepad, and indeed we do. So that's the basics of creating a config, deploying it out, how to open, save, manage, lock and unlock configs, and how the communication process works based on poll periods. Extremely important that that is understood how that works, otherwise you could be making changes expecting them to happen and they won't actually happen. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go and do exactly the same for my Windows 7 deployment groups. So again, new deployment group, and we will go through this fairly quickly now. Rename, and we are going to say in here this is my Win 7 desktops. We're going to our membership rules, Win 7 desktops. We're adding a group, and we'll do this on Active Directory container. We'll come in and we'll select my Win 7 desktops. That's my Win 7 desktops done. I will change my poll periods to 1 minute. Allow source authorization registering. Our packages. Now in this case here we're going to put Environment Manager 32-bit and the 64-bit. Of course my Windows 7 is a 64-bit, but it will take the relevant one. I'm going to take my EM demo and I'm going to assign it to use the latest version. I'm going to take my Application Manager agents and push them across as well, and I'll take my Performance Manager agents and push these across as well. And you can see I've done exactly the same here for my Windows 7 machines. Submit. My installation schedule, immediately install the agents and reboot the machine. My computers, it hasn't at this stage picked out my Windows 7, that's not a problem. We're now going to go to my Windows 7 machine, and on here of course we need to log on as the domain administrator. So we log on as a domain administrator, and of course we need to install the client communication agent. So again, exactly the same procedure as we went through before. So, easiest place to get the software. Let's use recommended settings. Okay, and I'll show you another method that we can do to do this. So if we go to our domain controller, the software we've actually got installed, I've dropped it, the installation directory, into software installs, software, and inside software, products, and we can see all of the MSIs listed here. And what I can do is go down to the AppSense Client Communication Agent 64-bit. We'll just take a copy of that. And there it is, copied across, and we'll just double click it to install it. And we go have an install that's going. Now I haven't done the prerequisites on this, so it may give me a bit of a prompt on that, so just to preempt that, just in case, we will go to the AppSense website. So again, just the AppSense management site, and here's our installation that's already happening. We might need it. In fact, we will just install these prerequisites just in case the core services. Probably already part of Windows 7. You can see I'm running Windows 9 here. And you can see it was already installed, so we didn't actually need to go through that step. So this is just running the MSI directly from the shortcut we created. So of course this could be SCCM or any other mechanism of deploying, and exactly the same as we've done before. Again, very important, HTTP demo-cc, the name of our website, our server, web server. Next, and install the software. And again, it's just going to run through the procedure, and this time it's going to self-register itself against the Windows 7 desktop machines. So as we can see, this is just installing away now. And we have finished. And click finish on there. And again, we could look in control panel if we wished. I'll go and have a look now back onto our Windows 7 desktop machines. And we have a computer called XP Desktop 0. Desktop 7-01. And if we look in the packages, we're just waiting for the update period and the poll period for all of the services to get installed, self-register, and for that Windows 7 desktop machine to reboot. So we'll come back to that. While we're doing that, we'll also go and create some default configs for Application Manager and Performance Manager. So Application Manager, we're on the console. And again, we'll talk about how these configs work in later masterclasses. So we're just waiting for Environment Manager console to fire up. So here's our Environment Manager console, and what we're going to do is we're going to load a default template for Environment Manager. So we're going to do an import from MSI. And we're going to go to our software directory where we downloaded the software. And in our software here, and if we go into products, templates, we're going to go to the English section, and I'm going to download a passive in Application Manager desktop configuration. Here we are here. And if we open that, it will actually now import a new config, and you can see that it's pre-populating some sections of the configuration for us. And exactly the same as before, all the AppSense products work in the same way. We're going to save this as a configuration in the Management Center. And again, we need to select our management server. We need to pass our credentials through. This is the new look and feel that all the AppSense products are moving to, with this white background, very much an office style background. And we'll give this one AM demo. And again, save and unlock. And that's going to be pushed out. Excellent. And we're going to do the same for Performance Manager. And a Performance Manager, there is no templates to import, but a default config is what 90% of customers will end up using, and you will use it in their POC demo environment. So we'll just wait for Performance Manager console to fire up. And there it is. And we're just going to save a blank config as a default config. So again, click into it, save as, configuration in the Management Center. And again, we're prompted for our management server. We're going to use connect and our pass-through credentials. And we're going to give this one a name of PM demo and save it. So all is left for us to do now is apply these configs, these 2 extra configs we created, to our deployment groups. So we'll go into our deployment AppSense Management Center for our XP desktops. Packages, we can see down in our packages that we have Application Manager with no config. Here's our config now stored in the database. Right click, assign it, use latest version. And we will also do the same for the Performance Manager. We will go down, Performance Manager, assign, and use latest version, and submit it. And we'll also do the same in our Win 7 machines as well. So we'll go down to packages for Win 7, assign, use latest version. Our Environment Manager, we also have the config already, and our Performance Manager will come down and we will assign, use latest version, and submit. So let's see what's happening. We're going to have a look in our XP desktops, look at our computers. There's our XP desktops, and you can see we're pending a couple of installs for the Application Manager demo config and for the Performance Manager demo config. This machine has already had the services installed. We're just adding configs, will not require reboots. Windows 7 machines here, you can see we're still waiting quite a few pending installs of the services and of course the configs as well, so we're obviously going to have to wait for a reboot there. So we'll come back to that in a second. Now you can see that our XP desktops have all finished, so let's go in and take a quick look at that. So here's our XP desktops that's sat here, and now if we go and run calculator, we can test Performance Manager. Run calculator, if we go into scientific mode, we do a task manager, and let's see what happens if we load the CPUs up. So 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5, keep going all the way up to that number. You'll see that the CPU will rise to 100%, and then Performance Manager should kick in and use thread throttling, as we can see, and we can see that Performance Manager has been deployed out to my Windows XP machine quite happily. And we could do similar tests in audit mode for Application Manager, but that's for a further masterclass. We come back now. Windows 7 machine looks like it's rebooted, so let's go and have a look. If we come across and look at our Windows 7, nope, not quite yet. It's nearly done. We've still got an Application Manager and Performance Manager stuff to be installed yet. So again, we'll just wait for those to come through. And we can see that our Windows 7 machines have all been configured and set up. So if we come back into our Windows 7 machine, and this time if we log on as our finance user, so we'll switch user, what of course we should see is we should see icons on the desktop over the top of the mandatory profile that we created. Remember, my mandatory profile on this machine is blank with a black background, so we should see the icons appear over the top of that. And there we are. We can see that I have my calculator and I have my notepad that's appeared there as well onto my 2 machines there. And again in here, if we go and run calculator, for our calculator up, we will go and do view scientific mode, and we'll do the same thing. No, we can't. They've actually fixed this in Windows 7, so you can't do exactly the same thing. You have to put a lower number, so we'll just go there, and again we'll hit n factorial, and you can see they fixed it. Bit of Microsoft. So let's try a smaller number, n factorial, and let's get that a little bit higher, and we can see now the CPU has gone up to 100%, and Performance Manager again should kick in, and we see it there. So everything's working lovely. So we can close them down. So just go back to our console again. If you don't get any of those tests running smoothly, then you need to be checking to make sure you've got green ticks across the board. You have a config applied. A config actually has something to do in it. And all else fails, check to make sure that you haven't run out of an enterprise license. So we go down to the licensing section, and under here you can see that I have got a demo license with 18 days remaining. You may find that after 21 days that this demo license will expire and none of the AppSense components will work. So that's the end of Masterclass version number 4, to go through the creation of simple configs, deployment of the AppSense services onto your endpoint devices, in my case here XP and Windows 7, updating of configs, locking and unlocking, and simple tests. Thank you.